Welcome to Seed Savers workshop entitled At Home Seed Processing. My name is Koby Hagen and I am the Seed Production Manager. And today I'm here to talk about how to harvest the fruits of your labor at your home in a simple, accessible way. I hope to carry you through a few of the crops that are ready here in the Midwest in August. That includes peas, hollyhock flowers, mustard greens, tomatoes, an early variety, cucumber, lettuce, and amaranth. We're gonna start with dry seeded crops. We're gonna start with peas, hollyhocks, and then mustard to go into. And before we do that, I wanted to just show a couple supplies that you may need. You don't have to have these supplies. All of these things could be saved with a simple paper plate and your fingers. In case you do wanna get a little bit more detailed, I have some things that are simple enough to find around your household. So the number one thing I think that all seed harvests need to have is a permanent Sharpie marker and some kind of label that isn't gonna fade, because this is gonna contain your seed story. It's gonna contain the year that you harvested the seed. It's gonna contain the name, hopefully some more details about what it tastes like, how it grew, what the conditions were like, because this is what you use to pass on to yourself in the next year. Even if you think you'll remember, you won't. So you want to keep things on this label, and also to pass to your neighbors and your friends and your family. So first things first, must-haves, permanent marker, and a label. Another thing that is good to have is a really smooth surfaced harvest. Either can be a plate. We have these little harvest tins which are fairly expensive. This is stainless steel, but you can also just use a simple ceramic plate, something that's smooth that you can harvest your seed into. So we're gonna begin with peas, and we're gonna take a look at how to do that. So peas are gonna be one of the first things that come to fruition for most people in North America. The one thing you wanna do when you harvest, you're gonna harvest most dry seeded crops, which include anything that doesn't have a fleshy body around it. You're gonna harvest them when they are all browned out, when their growth point is dry and the seed is really hard inside. You can now, before you make a big harvest, you can always open a pea pod up and do a test, which is my favorite test in the world. It's called the fingernail dent test. You open up the pod and you press the seed with your fingernail, and there should be no mark to be made. That means the seed coat is hard, the little tiny seed is fully mature, and you can go ahead and harvest all the seed pods that look like this one. So when you're processing any kind of seed, the goal is to get it as clean as possible, because you do not want any moisture around the seed. You do not want any kind of insect or fungal development. And so the goal when you're at your home is to take away all the plant matter. You want to kind of do some hand threshing, if you will. With peas, it's really nice because most peas pop out just like so. They're easy. They might fall back into your bowl. You actually want to do it into a clean container of some kind with a higher edge so they're not bouncing around. And you can do this with kids, you can do this with your family, do this with elders. A whole intergenerational effort can be made on a small seed harvest like this, or even a larger one. So basically, you'll pop out the seed, very simple, and I'm sure you've all done this just while you're out in the garden. Pop them all into the container and remove the plant chaff, and then you have almost completely clean seed. Once you harvest seed, you want to let it maybe aerate for another week or so. It's kind of like a special assurance, just in case there's extra moisture that was around the pod. Once you remove the pod, you let the seed dry a little bit more, because having your seed dry is what's going to ensure its longevity in storage. So once I do all my peas like so into the container, I'm going to make sure my label goes with it. And I would like to attach it to the container somehow with a twist tie or a piece of tape, making sure it doesn't blow away or something like that, because once you lose it, you lose it. And then I'm going to put this with the label in an airtight container in dark, cool, dry storage. So that's how you process peas. So simple. So after peas, during the harvest season, you'll likely have a lot of flowers of interest that you really want to harvest. Hollyhock is one of the earliest flowers. A lot of flower seed heads can be extra spiky, so some other supplies you might want to consider when you're harvesting hollyhock are gloves. They can either be nitrile gloves, or they can be your garden gloves, because you're just going to snag off the pods that are the most brown, but they also have like a lot of little stitches, and they can make your skin hurt after a while. So making sure you know your plants and your flower types, and touching them and saying, oh, if I harvest them more than 2 minutes, it might create some kind of skin irritation. So be sure to cover your hands if needed. So for hollyhock harvest, we make sure that, once again, with a dry seeded crop like this, the attachment to the plant is browned out and completely dry. And I would open up a seed head just to see what the seed is like, if it's hard or not. And these ones are really hard, no fingernail dent, the fingernail dent test. And so with that, you can kind of see these are already falling apart because they're so dry. We harvested these about a week ago and let them dry in a well aerated space in like a paper bag. You can do that at home, where there's some wind movement. And then after a week of drying, we decide to clean them. So really it's about breaking off the plant matter. You can do this like I did with peas into a container. You just want to kind of crush the plant matter off of the hollyhock. And it's really dry. The drier the better, because that way it all separates. The heavy seed separates from the lighter plant matter, and it's easier for cleaning. So this is the first step. You can kind of see, you zoom in here, that the heavy seed is falling down and the hollyhock the heavier seed is falling down and the plant matter is surfacing. So that's kind of leading us to the second point. If we really want to save the seed for a long time, then we would want to clean it even more than this. We would want to use some winnowing action or light blowing to blow the light plant matter that's sitting at the top off of the heavier seeded hollyhock. And that's a fairly simple way. The cleaner your seed is in storage, the longer it can last. However, if you don't get it perfectly clean, that's fine. If you took this and put this in storage and seeded it out next year, that is awesome. I like to make sure people don't feel they need to have seed packet ready seed, because you're not actually selling it. We're just trying to make sure we are being good stewards and perpetuating this very beautiful flower in perpetuity with our neighbors and our friends. So don't become pressured to get it too clean, but you can make it a challenge every year to perfect your skills with cleaning. But for the first year or second year, just make sure it's dry and get the big chunks away from your seed before you put it in an airtight container. So that's hollyhock. The third dry seeded crop we're going to do is mustard. And mustard is part of the brassica family, which has these beautiful siliques pods when they're dry and ready. Let me just show you. With the brassica family, they kind of ripen in branches versus pods. The pods are on the branches, but this, when it's ready, like I said, it's browned out. Some seed pods have already popped open. It's called dehisce, and maybe I've lost some of that. But they'll dehisce either before you harvest, just naturally. That's the plant trying to reseed itself and spread its seeds, or they'll dehisce when they're drying. So what happened was, when this brassica was looking brown in the field, went and did a seed test, just like I did with the peas and the hollyhocks, and it appeared ready, and the stem was really dry. So cut all of these stems into a paper bag and let that dry for about a week with aeration. Didn't shove tons in a paper bag, used about 5 paper bags to take down about 5 plants. I don't want mold to grow, so I want to make sure every branch has enough space in that paper bag. And then once I did that, then I'm going to take the dry matter, the dry plants, out of the paper bag, and I want to, once again, remove as much plant material as possible from the seeds themselves. These are very tiny, they bounce, and so the goal is, if I only have this much, I'm just going to do it by hand once again, some hand threshing, removing the chaff, which is just plant matter, plant debris, and I'm going to take it and I'm just going to crush the pods. They're going to pop open. They're starting to, once again, the heavy seed sinks and the bigger pieces stay afloat there. If I don't want to do additional cleaning, I'm going to take out that branch. I know all the seeds have popped off, all the pods are opened, and I'm going to keep doing that until I get done with my pile. And if you don't have time to do this, I'm sure a kid on your block or somebody around that really likes texture and likes to just be helpful. It's an easy, fun project for people to do. It doesn't take much. And that's what makes brassica seeds so cool, because they just pop open. They're one of the easiest pods to open up by hand. So once I do that, then if I get a good amount, I guess I'll do the whole thing here in front of you guys. And this could have come from 5 plants. You want to harvest seed from as many healthy plants as possible. You may only have 3. Well, try to get seed from those 3 healthy plants, because you want to make sure, even at the home scale where you don't have 500 individuals, that you're preserving as much of that genetic memory and history and resilience of that one variety in your seed stock. So pulling from as many seeds, as many plants as possible, and then you can see this here. All the seed is falling to the bottom. I have all these dry husks. I could pull out the majority of them with my hands, throw them in a nice bucket, which I'm not doing right now, but you know, you pick your poison and how to clean your space at home. And then I'm gonna screen this because there's a lot of little debris here and I don't want that when I pass it on, so I'm gonna use screening. Screening involves having a tray to catch whatever you're letting fall through the screen that you dump your seed pile, your unclean seed onto. So I chose this rounded tiny screen. We have tons of these at Seed Savers. We're very lucky. It's been 40 years of collecting and having craftspeople make really cool things for us. So we have screens. We're gonna pour the almost clean seed onto the screen. And we have our little pile here. And there's probably about 1,000 seeds in there. So if I can get this a little bit more clean, I know I can separate that out and maybe feed 100 families with mustard. So I'm gonna shake the screen and the good seed's gonna fall through, the heavy seed's gonna fall through, and then the big pieces are gonna stay at the top, and I'm gonna be able to pour my cleaner seed into a seed packet, and voila, it's clean and dry for the year. And then what am I gonna do at the very end? Make sure I label. I can either make sure that it's labeled on the inside of my jar or my seed packet or my envelope, and make sure it's labeled on the outside. And that's mustard. All right, 3 down and 3 more to go. So the next one we're gonna look at is a little different. It's not a dry seeded crop, it is a wet seeded crop. It is tomato. Other wet seeded crops, wet seeded means it's encased by some kind of fleshy fruit and the seed itself has a little gel sac around that, which we'll look at very shortly. But other wet seeded crops besides tomatoes are cucumbers, squash, melon, eggplant. Some people think pepper is, but it's actually not. Pepper has a fleshy fruit around the pepper seed, but the seed itself is naked. It doesn't have a gel sac around it. So we're gonna look at tomatoes. It's a couple of different things that are different when you're harvesting for a fleshy, wet-seeded crop. You're not gonna look for the fruit to be dried and brown, because I don't even know how a tomato would get that way unless it was in a dehydrator. You're actually looking for physiological maturity. So it's lucky that when a tomato is market mature, meaning when we want to eat it, it is also physiological mature. So that means the seed is completely ripened and can seal itself off and be ready to be harvested as well. So you can actually get 2 yields from this. You can get a tomato sauce and you can also get seed from it. I'm just going to run through 2 other of the wet seeded crops that make it different when you're harvesting. Cucumber is different. This is Boothby's blonde cucumber, and this is what it looks like when it's ready for us to eat. However, if I cut this open and did a fingernail dent test on the seeds are hardly developed. What you're gonna wanna wait for in the cucumber is till it's physiologically mature. So this is kind of the progression. It's nice and crunchy and crispy. Seeds are deflated and not mature. And then this is its middle spot. Maybe there'll be a few mature seeds, and this is its fully ripened for seed harvesting, orange, bloated if you will. And even if this got a little mushy, there'd be really good seeds to harvest from it. So you won't even wait till it's a little soft, because cucumbers are tricky. You'll think you can save these, you'll even go through the whole process that I'm gonna show you, and then you plant them next year and nothing comes up because it wasn't actually a mature seed. So that's what makes cucumber different than tomato, is that its physiological ripeness is different timing than when we eat it. So you're gonna make sure you're harvesting at the right time for cucumbers. And then for squash, it's the same. For summer squash, at least, it's the same thing. Winter squash, we harvest for seed at the same time that we eat it. So you can have a 2-yield thing again. You can make a squash, roasted squash at the same time as you're processing your seed, as long as you scoop the seed out. And then summer squash is different. We eat it when it's tender, and have you ever seen seeds in a young, nice summer squash? Nope, because they're not ripe and they're not ready. We have to wait till this is the same plant, This is becoming physiologically ripe, meaning the seeds are becoming ripe and ready to go. So I have to wait till it's super hard and almost wood-like to harvest squash for squash seed. This is for eating, this is for seed. So now let's get into actually processing tomatoes. So all the wet seeded crops contain one more step then, or two more steps than a dry seeded crop. It entails separating the seed from the fleshy fruit, and then fermenting and decanting and then drying. So all of these, all seed processing for harvest season, you want to take the seed away from the plant matter. And this is just wet plant matter. So don't get confused. Don't think it's going to be too complicated. So I'm going to show you. It's very simple. You're going to want to have some type of clean cutting board, a nice sharp knife, especially for tomatoes. And then you're going to want a clean container like so. I like to use clear ones because I like to watch the process of fermentation that happens from the outside. So here we go. You harvested this. I'm going to make some sauce with it as well. And I'm just going to cut open the tomato. And let's see. It has different cavities, and so you might want to make a couple of slices. Here we are. We're gonna squeeze the tomatoes out with our fingers, and this is home scale, if you will, so this takes some time, and you're gonna squeeze as much juice in there as possible. That's 1/4 of a tomato. You're gonna keep doing that. You can save your tomato pieces for later, for processing into whatever your heart desires, and then you're gonna keep going. So it's fairly simple. You're gonna keep going until you have all your tomatoes processed and as much juice as you can in there. So if I processed all these, I'd probably get about that much juice. And then what I'm gonna do is let it sit. Because what's going to happen is the sugars and the juice and the tomato seed are gonna mix, and there's gonna be a nice gentle mold that forms around the tomatoes and starts eating away the gel sac and the seed. And that is the most important part in terms of wet seeded crops, is to make sure that gel sac is eaten by mold. Natural mold that exists in our house, outside, that breaks the gel sac, and that allows the tomato seed to actually dry and not get moldy over storage. If you don't do the fermentation, some of your seeds will mold in storage, and you'll be very, very sad come the next season trying to plant them out. So what you do is you finish processing, and then you cover the top of your container. I have cheesecloth here covering it with. You can use a bandana, something that's not going to allow fruit flies or insects to get in. You want to make sure it stays clean. And then you're just going to let it sit for 2 to 4 days. And you can see here there's some mold here on the sides that has developed. You'll start seeing separated seeds. The heavy seed once again falls to the bottom. The lighter seed that didn't fully mature floats to the top. And you will stir it every day, because you want seeds that don't touch the mold to get touched by the mold so it can eat away those gel sacs. And then now I'm going to show you what to do day number 4, when all the mold has kind of touched every seed and you've stirred it every day. Day number 4, then we have to finish the process of drying these seeds down. So the second to final step of processing this tomato is to decant it. That means using water to separate seed from other sediments. So within the tomato world, we're trying to separate all that fleshy, juicy, sugary stuff from the seed itself, so that the seed can dry and stay preserved over time in storage. So we're going to use lukewarm water, and we're going to fill up this jar, and we're going to fill it up to the top, making sure nothing spills out. Give it a little swirl, and then we're going to let this heavier seed settle to the bottom and pour all of the cloudy water off. Now we're going to do that a couple times, and it's okay to pull off some of the seed that floats to the top, because that seed isn't going to be the really heavy, vigorous, well-matured seed. So don't be frightened if some of it goes to the water gods or the compost gods. It's okay. And we're going to fill it up, and we're going to do this like 3 to 4 times until the water runs clean. Once the water runs clean, then we're going to do a final fill and a final pour into a stainless steel or plastic colander that's very tightly knit, to allow all the water to drain and to make sure our seed is fully rinsed and ready to be dried. And then once we do that, we're going to put the tomato seed on a surface that won't break off when the seed is dry, so something that's ceramic or stainless steel. Then I let it dry for 2 weeks in a dark, cool, well aerated place. Don't put it in direct sun because that will cause degradation of the seed. Make sure you're putting it in a place that's shady in your house with good wind flow. And then from there, I will make sure that I put the label in an airtight container or Ziploc bag and put in a cool spot for storage. To finish up this workshop, I wanted to talk about 2 other dry seeded crops that you may or may not be familiar with. One of them is lettuce. Here at Heritage Farm, we have a lot of lettuce growing, so we do isolation with lettuce bags, which are these impermeable. They let air through, let water through, but they don't let insects through. They're fairly long because, as you may see, this lettuce is going to seed, this might be new for you. So lettuce usually is a little rosette down here. It's a heading lettuce or a leafing lettuce. This one, I'm not sure if it's a heading or leafing because it's going to seed, and they all send up these really tall stalks. And so when they set up the tall stalks, they are sending out their flower shoots, and we are looking for a dry seed here. This lettuce isn't quite ready. It's still, the growth point in the flowers is still kind of green, and so we're not going to actually process this. I'm just gonna talk you through how you would in your own garden very quickly. So if this were actually, if the flower part were actually browned out and it was starting to feather out with a little pappus, which is like a white feathering that is attached to the seed and helps the seed fly through the air, so it helps transport the seed. Once you start seeing that, and this is more brown, you can say, okay, I'm ready to harvest the seed. And so a very simple way, even if you don't use these lettuce bags, these isolation bags, a very easy way is to take a paper bag, put it over the top of your lettuce seed because it is dry seed and it might want to float away on you. You'll put it over and you'll cut the stalk, and then you'll tip the bag over. And then you will let that dry for another week, just with that one stalk in it, that one plant. And then you'll rub the lettuce seed away from that white, papery, feathery pappus so that it falls into the bottom of that flower sack, and then you will let, and then that can be done seed. If you wanted to make it a little bit more clean, you could take a light breath to the seed and blow away the extra pappus, but lettuce seed is fairly easy to clean. And then you would what's the end of the thing? You let it dry, and then you want to package it in an airtight container with a label inside and outside. Don't forget about that label. So that is lettuce seed in a nutshell. Another very easy to grow and easy to process crop is amaranth. A lot of people see it as like a flowering ornamental plant. That it is. It is also one of the few amazing whole protein grains that we can grow. So it's like quinoa. So if you can grow this, it's great for birds. It's also great for a nutritious diet, and it is drought hardy. It's pretty much a food of the future. So if you can save the seed, you can eat it in the winter as well as plant it the next season. So amaranth is wind pollinated, and this is a couple different kinds of amaranth seed. Amaranth varieties, excuse me. And the really beautiful thing about amaranth is when the seed is ready, it falls right out of its beautiful flower stalk. And you can see right now, I'm just kind of threshing it with my fingers, in between my fingers. The beautiful evolution of the human hand is that it works for so many things. And so I'm just threshing it. You can see there's black and white seed, and the seed is hard. It doesn't dent with my fingernail. And I am gonna just I can do a light blow with my breath, and it's going to take away some of those flower tops, and then I can let this dry for a week or 2 on this plate and package it up, label it, and there we go. So for the seed that you've processed, you've threshed, but there's tons of plant matter, and the plant matter is the same size as the seed, like this hollyhock that we threshed earlier, you might want to try winnowing. And winnowing is using the air to separate plant chaff from the actual heavy precious seed. And so today is a semi-okay day. It's actually a grade C day because it's hard to use intermittent wind and a fan at the same time. You want air going one direction. So right now I've got it coming at me and I have the fan going that way. So we're gonna demo you know, how to do it on a kind of a difficult day. And so I have it all threshed in here, and I really wanted it to separate. So using the wind, if I have this at the right setting, this is just a simple box fan, maybe 10 or 20 bucks at the local hardware store. The wind, I'm going to try some different settings. I'm going to try the lowest setting first. And then I'm going to also make sure I have containers to catch the seed. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be pouring seed. These two containers are going to catch good seed, moderate seed, and then I have a tarp, or in this case, a blanket, to catch something that will catch other seed that maybe is good that will fall outside of it, and I might want to try it again. So this is like an experiment. There's constant tinkering. You've got the speed of the fan, you've got where you've placed your buckets, and then you've got the tarp to catch the extra seed in case you want to try it again. So set yourself up for success by creating this space in which you can experiment with the seed, with the speed of the fan. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a flat bucket, a square one, not a circular one, because I want to pour evenly across the airflow of the fan. And I have it at the lowest setting first because I want to make sure that I'm not blowing the seed completely far away. So start slow, start small. And I'm going to gently shake this, letting the seed fall evenly. I'm noticing that some of the good seed is falling straight into that first bucket, some of the lighter seed is falling into the second bucket, and a lot of plant matter is falling outside of the buckets entirely. And this is giving me a little bit cleaner seed to work with, and I'm going to try to get through the whole container here. And I might want to stop and say, oh, I'm going to catch a little bit more seed, I'll place these buckets a little bit further out. Usually I keep this first bucket completely flush with the fan to catch that really heavy good seed. You can, if you don't have a fan, you don't have buckets, you can also do this on a consistently windy day, and that will get you the same effect. People have been winnowing seeds for thousands and thousands of years and doing so without electricity. So challenge yourself and try both ways. And do it over a tarp or a blanket of some kind so you can save your seed and try it again if you need to. Feel free to take a look in here, and we've got heavy seed in the first one, little bit of plant matter, and then I can save the cleaner seed for next season. And that's winnowing. Thank you for joining me here at Heritage Farm to review the very important principles of at-home seed saving. The very foundations of all of our agricultural heritage happened at home in people's backyards on a small scale. And so please take some of these simple methods and incorporate them into your own household and your neighborhood, and make them into your own rituals, and you'll develop your very own special techniques, and make sure to label. I will be seeing you next year.